in 2023, very, very recent in September, actually. So here in the studio with me is Florin Rotar, who is the Chief AI Officer for Avanade, who is responsible for driving the global AI strategy and execution across all parts of the business, spanning leadership, sales, solution, delivery, capability, and also their partner ecosystem. Additionally, Florin is responsible for his company's own AI first transformation, identifying new ways AI can disrupt and improve how we work, operate, and deliver for their clients. He's been named inside Entrepreneur Magazine's top 10 CTOs to watch in 2023, as well as Forbes Technology Council official member of 2023. He published and is co-author of the book, We the People, Human Purpose in a Digital Age, a guide to digital ethics for individuals, organizations, and robots of all kinds. He is passionate, optimistic, and energetic business and technology leader, having lived and worked in over 10 countries across 3 continents, now calling U.S. Pacific Northwest home. We're not busy raising young kids. He loves running and listening to EDM. So welcome, Florin. Just so glad that we're finally able to do this together.
Thanks, Faye. I'm slightly embarrassed and blushing by that long introduction. So nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I gotta kick off with a warm question, which is after listening to so many podcasts of yours recorded with other hosts and seeing you on stage,
Mhm.
needless to say, the room was so packed, as I mentioned to you, I couldn't even see myself in. So I was really watching from afar. I haven't really heard a lot about your origin story, about your journey, like where you grew up and how you became the person you are today.
Okay, that's a long story, which, as you said, spans many countries and several continents. But I grew up in Sweden, hence my accent. Spent about 10 years of my life in UK as well. So when we established Avanade, I joined as one of the first employees there. I've got a history in Procter and Gamble as well, and I used to run my own business prior to that. But moved to Seattle about 10 years to be close to Microsoft engineering because we obviously do a lot of work with and together with Microsoft. So I thought it would be just a two-year stint, but we ended up liking the nature and the climate
Mhm.
and the people, and we're still there. Though I'm joining you from New York today.
Wow. Yeah, I know you've been traveling a lot. That's incredible to know your backstory, having worked in many different organizations, have been an entrepreneur yourself. So um, we might come back, ask more questions later on, but I want to open it up to the questions at hand that so many people are interested in learning about you, which is that you've transitioned from CTO to CAO at Avar, and is relatively new in the industry. So we're just curious, what was the transition like for you, and what are some of the responsibilities associated with being a CAO?
Um, so it's been an interesting transition, to put it mildly, because in my previous role I was obviously the chief technology officer, so I was living and breathing pretty much technology all the time. But in my new role, um, actually, it's more about people. So as Avanade itself has been working with generative AI now for 3 years. So we picked up the signals with the Avanade R&D team around what's happening with OpenAI several years ago. So we've sort of gradually evolved our understanding that this is not just about technology and it's not about data, although clearly you need a good data and you need a robust data platform to be able to have any reasonable chance of doing anything useful and durable with AI. But the main challenge and the main objective is actually how you get people with you,
Mhm.
and maybe more importantly, how you use and why you use AI as a force for good and something that you use to truly help people be enabled to become the best versions of themselves, to
Mhm.
gain new skills, to accelerate their career, to do things they weren't potentially imagining that they would be able to do. So yeah, it's been kind of an interesting sort of evolution, talking from spending 100% or 90% of my time with technology, and now I'm still obviously spending some amount of time on technology, but it's much more people first centric, the role.
Wow. I last week I actually spent 2 days, one day at Northeastern to attend their EAI AI event, and then the day after was AI, which is AI Accelerator
Mhm.
Institute. And something that just came up, which even before I planned these questions, was I think people really thought like, what would it be like to be a CAO? And having just hire someone from outside of the organization, the discussion
Mhm.
was that probably would be more challenging.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel like for you, the transition may have been more natural because you come from technology,
Yeah,
having worked in the organization for a long time as CTO. So I feel like probably a lot of the same responsibility will carry over, but there would
yeah,
just be a new layer of AI on top of that.
yeah. I mean, I am blessed and lucky because it was my sort of the R&D team in the
Mm.
CTO organization which picked up the signals around generative AI. So I've had a chance to work with it for at least 3 years, though obviously we've been doing traditional AI for a decade plus. But then I was lucky as well, or serendipitous, I should rather say, that I used to look our future after our future of work practice before. So I do sort of have a passion and a background on the people side, and how to work differently. So this is it's a lovely combination of tech and people.
Oh, that's so good to hear.
Yeah.
Um, You've talked a lot about AI first leader, yourself being in leadership. I feel like there's a lot of influence and teaching and learning that you could share with
Mm.
other leaders. So if our audience isn't familiar with this term, AI first leader, could you help us understand what it is and maybe how to even become an AI first leader?
Yeah. So it's interesting actually. It seems like the word itself, AI first, is a little bit sort of divisive. So because it sort of the immediate knee-jerk connotation, we're putting AI first above people, and that's definitely not the case. So uh, the way I think about it is an evolution, or rather a revolution of the eras we've had before with mobile first and cloud first. And AI first is intended to sort of mean that AI is becoming the new computing platform, for sure.
Mhm.
But um, I think the way we in Avanade are looking at this is that it truly um, is going to transform the way organizations work. And some industries, like our own services industry, but also telco, entertainment, financial services, are like really going to be um, uh, quite fundamentally impacted by this, and we think
Mhm.
that's more an opportunity than a threat. They
Mhm.
will append, commercial models and sort of the differentiation, the products, the services, the operations of the company. So as part of my role, and the way I think about it is that we truly have to look at it as a topic which impacts the entire organization. It impacts people, it impacts finances, it impacts operations, it impacts legal, it impacts sales, it impacts IT. It impacts, uh, the growth of the company, the differentiation of the company. So what we see is that for the most successful companies that we work with, and the way we're trying to do this ourselves, is that this is becoming a C-level and a board level priority.
Mm.
And it's it's fundamental. It's a great opportunity. It also has its risks if you're not doing this right.
Mm. Absolutely. I really like what you said at the very beginning of the Microsoft Envision Tour in New York. And I know you've attended so many conferences, but literally the first thing you said, you walked up and before any of the other speakers, you said, when it comes to AI, don't just tell people, show them how it works.
Mm.
That really resonated with me. It was very, very short and brief, and that's kind of really got me hooked. So could you maybe talk about where that philosophy comes from?
Yeah. So it's a bit of twofold. So I think on one level there is way too much obsession, I believe, in the industry with the what rather than the why and the how. So I think, you can do loads of things with AI. You can put things into production fairly easily. Everybody's talking about use cases, but I fundamentally believe that we as an industry are not asking enough, why are we doing this in the first place? How does this truly align to, an organization's mission and value and strategy and objectives? And how are we doing this such that it's responsible, it's respectful, it's human, it's humane? So I think, the show people rather than tell people is because I think at the C-suite there is good theoretical understanding of AI and generative AI, but limited practical understanding. So, what we sort of discovered with our executive team and with our leaders is that when you give them the tools, when you allow them to use this in their daily life, I think they truly understand the power and the potential. And then the separate dimension is to put it in the hands of people so they truly experience how this is, it's not something which is going to replace you. It's actually, I believe, generative AI should be very carefully used for automation, or complete automation at least, because a human needs to be in the loop. A human needs to be in control. A human is the pilot, if I can use that analogy. AI is the co-pilot. And, the beauty of this, when you have AI and humans, where the human is the pilot, the AI is co-pilot, you're collaborating, you're working together, you're doing things iteratively. It gives you that power and enablement to do things you weren't imagining you could do before. I mean, that's kind of wonderful, and that takes away the fear and the anxiety. So yeah, I'm kind of a big believer in, just ask the why, ask the how, and make it real.
I love how you use the pilot and co-pilot metaphor, and actually makes Microsoft Copilot really seems even more intuitive
Hmm.
because of that. And I love how we transition now a little bit into fear of AI, exactly like you said.
Hmm.
And it's almost like the answer or, one of the solutions to that is to humanize it, to help people understand
Hmm.
how you work together. Now, the fear of AI is really real. It's everywhere popping up in major media. Some people have this fear because they're concerned with tech itself, AI as a tech
Hmm.
itself, or some with privacy. But frankly, AI isn't something any one of us can run away from right now. So we might as well embrace it and learn how it works. So, what is your take on that? And also, have you seen anything that has helped people sort of overcome that fear and uncertainty of AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, it's quite serious. And I think we as an industry have tremendous responsibility to do this right. So I, I personally genuinely believe that we're nowhere near AI maturity which is going to be mature enough to be let alone and be unleashed without, human in control, and human in the loop, and again, the human as the co-pilot, as the pilot, and AI as the co-pilot. Now, are there organizations and people which are doing the wrong things and in my opinion, the wrong things, and overestimating the power of this and getting, ahead of their skis, so to say? Yes, but just incidentally, this week we published a big piece of research we've done with about 3,000 decision makers around 10 countries, just to survey and do quite a lot of research around how do people think about this? How do employers think about this? How do employees feel about it? And one piece of statistics which really, really made my day and my week, and I think my year, is that about 95% of the employers are not looking at AI to replace jobs, but they're actually believing that their organizations may even increase the number of jobs by up to 9%. So I do, this to me is sort of proof that actually the world is pretty good. People are trying to do the right thing, and this is going to be such a great tool to create value, to create jobs. And frankly, it just gives us the chance to tackle some of the world's trickiest problems around healthcare, education, financial inequality, which we've frankly been unable to do before. And we can do that now, and we can create jobs and help people become the best versions of themselves. So I know I sound optimistic, but I am generally optimistic.
I'm with you. I'm also feeling very optimistic. As a creator, there are a lot of automation now with AI tools that I can use and apply.
Mm.
Even earlier today, I wrote an article about how to use 11 Labs to create your own AI voice audiobook,
Mm.
which the cost of so many things that we do, even our mundane lives, are so
Yeah,
costly, becomes prohibitive for us to even consider it. And so I think AI, in many ways, could democratize
yeah,
creativity in the work we do.
yeah.
With that said, I gotta say, like in the past few weeks, I've been invited on certain Zoom calls and I've been receiving emails and text messages
Mm.
kind of privately from colleagues I've worked with before. Now that I've been an entrepreneur for nearly 10
Mm.
years now, I'm so out of the loop for the corporate life, but I'm seeing some layoffs for sure. And then when I read the newsletters first thing in the morning, I see a lot of these kind of, I don't know, is media rah-rah, just like tech
Mm.
layoffs is so severe. So I'm going to just pivot the questions to what do you think is that someone can do, regardless of their age and current domain, can really do to future-proof their career? Or, how to think about that, perhaps in general, if future-proof isn't the perfect word for it.
That's an important question, a difficult question. I don't think I have, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I'm learning myself, but just to share some very personal sort of guidelines that I've tried to use in my career, and that's to be open-minded, to realize that the world is changing, and you have to be a lifelong learner. And I've always tried for myself to have sort of the profile where, I know something about everything, but then I try to know everything about something. And that everything about something, needs to change over time as the world changes and reality changes. But, to be more specific, um, I think um, really understanding responsible AI is such a terrific career opportunity because it is not easy. Um, it requires skills and, you know, that special something around, in my opinion, around empathy and values and principles, which I don't think AI will, ever replace, but it can certainly help us with it. So we as a company, by the way, we're rolling out responsible AI to every single one of our tens of thousand employees because we believe it's one of those skills which everybody needs to know, everybody needs to understand. It's the right thing to do. And it's actually a responsibility we have towards our customers for, everyone in our organization to be certified and trained in responsible AI. And then another thing which might sound a little bit strange, but actually I do believe there is an art and a bit of a science around prompt engineering, and I should say engineering in air quotes. Um, but the whole notion of how you work with an AI co-pilot in an effective and constructive way, somewhat more iteratively, I think it does require a lot of us to unlearn some old habits and learn some new habits. I think it's going to be as important as, sort of basic knowing how to write an email or knowing how to browse the internet is today. We're
Mhm.
going to take that for granted a couple of years from now. But I do believe, you know, we all need to sort of upskill ourselves and learn that. And I mean, just to use a kind of a silly or a silly example, and I'm kind of embarrassed I'm going to use this, but I'll
Do
do
it.
it anyway. So, we started using Microsoft M365 Copilot way back in as a very, very early adopter. Um, so, personally, I started using it, and my sort of initial knee-jerk reaction was, well, I'm not a native English speaker, and sometimes I have grammatical issues in my emails, or I feel I'm not writing as good emails as I should. So I started using Copilot to help me write more, what I thought was more intelligent sounding
Mhm.
emails, but they became longer and more complicated. And I felt pretty good about myself, around only to find out very quickly that my team was using Copilot to not read my emails because they thought my emails were too long and too complicated.
Funny.
So I was using AI to pretend I write emails, and they're using AI to pretend they've read my emails, right? So, I mean, that's kind of a silly example, and we caught that one pretty early. But it does show that I think, I mean, we all need sort of to think differently around how we work with a co-pilot, and organizations definitely need to think differently around how they adopt co-pilots and how they truly get value out of that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's I'm just thinking out loud here, but I would say be a long life learner, have an open mindset, a growth mindset. And I do think right now, like really focusing on responsible AI is probably it's a good thing to do. That's what I would teach my kids if they would be old enough.
Wow. How old are your kids? I was just wondering.
So I have a daughter who's 7 and a son who's 11, who
Wow.
is dabbling with Python. So I'm starting them early.
Very smart. Actually, that's interesting for a parent to be in the AI space and how that could inform how you raise your kids. And that's fascinating.
Well, I think
Um,
it's actually, I think AI is a fantastic opportunity in education as well. And I'm starting to see some schools which are being really smart about this, instead of, fearing just sort of the fear factor that students are using, ChatGPT to cheat.
mm,
They're using AI to create personalized curriculums,
mhm.
um, within boundaries, of course, and with the right level of management and, avoiding hallucinations and management. But, as a way of helping every single student with a personalized learning journey, which meets them where they are based on their interest, their style, their joys of learning. And instead of having, one teacher to 30 students, you have, one teacher still, but with, 30 AI co-pilots, teachers, which is, helping every single student in an individualized manner. And I've seen some beautiful results with that. So
That's so interesting. People in working in education and who very much pro AI and coming up with quizzes, tests, and interesting exercises
mm,
for kids. I love just hearing these very open-minded ideas and ideations for sure. And I think AI inevitably is already impacting education. I think there are a lot of people need to share more positive
yeah,
outcomes as opposed to fear alone.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I just, again, to give you, an example around how to, sorry, my app here is acting up. So no, I was just going to say, the an example usage of Copilot within our, in our organization, which has been so wonderful to see. Somebody who's relatively new in the organization who normally might have struggled with how to get started. How do I create a project plan or a deliverable of some sort? Where do I find the right information? Maybe having that sort of fear factor. And, at least I had the sort of intruder or imposter syndrome when I started working around, what am I doing here? Am I good enough? Well, they found out that, I didn't learn anything I should have been learning at school or in my previous
Mm.
job. And actually to have a co-pilot, which is, reasoning on top of tens of thousands of the work that we have already been doing in the company for the last years, or maybe hundreds of thousands of documents, and helping somebody with, a starting point, something which is 50%, done and somebody can iterate and continue to work upon. And I've seen people really shine and sort of overcome their fears, or it's really helped some of our team members which have, dyslexia, for example, or just sort of, are struggling a little bit with their self-confidence. And I just think it's so wonderful when you use AI to truly empower people, and people get to see, this thing is not going to replace me. It's going to empower me. It's going to help me. You know, it's um, it's making me better, and making workday more, a better experience for me, which I think is just wonderful.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I know this, I feel like this originally was totally unrelated, but as you were talking about AI and people, I remember that also, I didn't grow up in this country in the US. And when I first started working, there weren't nearly as many international employees. And there was a level of discomfort sometimes with other colleagues.
Mm.
And I remember having these conversations at the very beginning of, well, there's so many foreign workers. How will they impact us, our work, and our employment opportunities? It was unfortunate I have to be in those conversations, but now in retrospect, I realize that it's people like us bring a different side of the culture, conversation, different way of speaking, looking at it from a different angle. I feel like now it feels a lot more natural. And yeah, it's really interesting. I just had this like epiphany. So, you mentioned the resources real quick, and I think it's such a luxury for a company like Avanade and of course Microsoft as well to come up with these internal certifications instead of a broad blueprint, a white labeled something to force
Mm.
onto the employees. So I'm kind of curious, like, you may not have been working directly with L&D or people who create these courses,
Oh,
but
I
what
do.
are what, what are some of the, and that's okay. Like, I wonder if have any insights to some best practices in developing internal resources and internal AI Academy. If not, are there any external sources that you would like to maybe recommend or have heard of?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. So we recently announced our Avanade School of AI, which we're rolling out to the entire company, tens of thousands of people. And it is a bit of a combination of things which are ready-made in the industry, and things we create ourselves. And there are some things like, responsible AI, which truly, I mean, there's a basic responsible AI framework, which, are, I mean, there are think tanks out there, there are industrial bodies who've worked on this. When we started on this journey 5 years ago, we had to write the manual ourselves. But we still believe that a really, really good responsible AI framework is something which embodies the company's values and principles and sort of what you stand for. And it takes, it codifies the company culture in a good way. So that's the reason I'm saying that is the training course we've developed ourselves. But then again, there is good training available, that organizations and people can get from the outside world. Microsoft has some great resources. Um, they're launching prompt engineering library as well, which is really good. So the best examples from the industry on how to effectively use prompt engineering, and I think we've contributed to, to a bunch of those, having worked with Copilot for months now. I mean, for me personally, um, I just read a lot, and one of my favorite go-to resources is the AI canon from Andreessen Horowitz.
Mm.
Um, so I'm not sure how much has been updated lately, but it's a great collection, in my opinion, of you know, deep articles, a lot of research, focuses on both the people side, the business side, and on the technology side. And I actually really, really enjoy uh, uh, catching up with that. But I, yeah, I don't know that I have a single source. I'm lucky enough is that, we're a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft. So our friends in Microsoft have a ton of training and content, and our friends in Accenture have even more training and content. So we're taking the best of both worlds and using it both.
Wow, wonderful. Yeah, so I notice we probably only have like a couple of minutes left. I just want to close on a question.
Yeah.
It's okay if the, I'm not sure if this is the perfect question, but I'm really curious that you've been speaking at a lot of different events.
Mhm.
This is probably maybe you've been living this phase of your life for a little while now, and people like myself, post-pandemic have finally like stepped out of the house,
Mhm.
traveling, going to more events. I'm curious, do you have any quick tips on how to make the most of, AI or tech events in general as a speaker, as well as an attendee or as a creator in this case?
Mhm. That's a good question.
It's so
Um,
overwhelming at
so
these events, like, oh my God.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I try to meet people and to learn from people, because I don't think anyone out there has the complete story. And I think that, um, value truly happens when you meet different people and you exchange what you've learned and you're open to learning from others. So I've had the benefit of and privilege, I've been at Microsoft events and met with a lot of people there from, whom I learned from. Had a chance a few weeks ago to attend the corporate boardroom summit and to engage with the board suite and to hear, how they're thinking about this. And it's which is quite different from, what the CIOs and the CDOs that I mostly work with um, are thinking about this.
Mhm.
I got a chance to attend the Hunter Mueller strategy event in Silicon Valley last week, which was really useful as well. So I try to meet people and to carve out time for a sort of quality discussion where I hope I can offer them something they can learn from, and I'm definitely looking for nuggets and lessons learned from others. I think otherwise it's a personal style. So as a speaker, I just try to be honest, and I dislike sort of the politically correct, super scripted presentations. I
Yeah.
have to admit, actually, I didn't read your questions before you sent them on purpose, because I did want to, you know, answer from my heart and be honest and direct, and
Mhm.
just share what I felt and what I've learned. Uh, but I think, just be curious,
Mhm.
be optimistic,
Mhm.
um, and embrace this. And I think, yes, I mean, there are risks, and there is a huge level of responsibility that we all have.
Mhm.
But isn't it wonderful? I mean, we're in once in a generation, or maybe more than once in a generation, maybe once in 100 years or 300 years,
Mhm.
point in time where, we finally have some tools that can help us address humanity's biggest challenges in a way we haven't been able to do before. And how wonderful is that? And, what a great opportunity to be alive, to be
Mhm.
able to learn this and help and participate in solving those challenges. So yeah, I guess optimism is a good thing.
I love it. Thank you so much, Florin. I couldn't find a better way to kind of wrap everything up with that. Not with my question, but with your answer, really. And I want to remind people who are watching and listening to this to also check out all the resources I've included in the description below. To learn more about Florin, please follow him on LinkedIn and also Avanade's website, as well as A16Z, which is several resources mentioned during
We're
this conversation.
we're not affiliated with them. I just like what they're doing. So well done.
Absolutely. Microsoft, the Copilot. I'll include some resources there for sure. And Florin, if there's anything I can do, we can do to support you, please do not hesitate to reach out. And with that said, I'm going to conclude today's recording.
Thanks, Faye. It was great talking to you.
Oh, likewise. Thank